Howdy. Welcome to East Java, even though you cannot really see it, but it's in the middle of the screen. I've been adding 74 volcanoes to Google Maps recently in Europe, more specifically Germany. 74. Despite I think there might be many more, because Cryptodomes, source domes, Quellkuppeln in German aren't. Mostly they aren't on the list because they are not seen as volcanoes. Here in East Java we have many volcanoes. Raum, volcanic unrest, and we have Semeru, which is erupting. There has been even some plasma phenomena there going on. You can find the video. But here we have Sidoario. And here, Sidoario, Mudvolcano. And there's like water vane going off of that, several, in a way. It is more or less black and white. So you could even think of that every now and then he's or she, the volcano, is erupting dark stuff, and then is coming white stuff, and then is coming black stuff, and then is coming white stuff. So this might be just the natural fluctuations of emissions of this Sidario Mudvolcano, which is not on this list. There is no green volcano marked on that. And it's visible from quite far away. The reason why I talk about that is because I stumbled across this article from 27th of December, so it's quite fresh. What are mud volcanoes? Mud volcanoes form when a combination of mud, fluids and gases erupt at the Earth's surface. Look at the picture. These are cranes and stuff. They are building there. That's rather huge, you know. Engineers have tried to coral mud volcano in Indonesia that has covered more than 1,700 acres with mud. Rice farmers living in Sidoarjo, Regency, Indonesia, awoke to a strange sight on May 29th in 2006. The ground had ruptured overnight and was spewing out steam. In the following weeks, water, boiling hot mud and natural gas were added to the mixture. When the eruption intensified, mud started to spread over the fields. Alarmed residents evacuated, hoping to wait out the eruption safely. Except that it didn't stop. Weeks passed and the spreading mud engulfed entire villages. In a frantic race against time, the Indonesian government began to build levees to contain the mud and stop the spread. When the mud overtopped these levees, they built new ones behind the first set. The government eventually succeeded in stopping the mud's advance, but not before the flows had wiped out a dozen villages and forced 60,000 people to relocate. Why would Earth suddenly start vomiting forth huge quantities of mud like this? Introducing mud volcanoes. The Lucy structure, a contraction of Lumpur Sidoarjo, meaning Sidoarjo mud, is an example of a geological feature known as a mud volcano. They form when a combination of mud, fluids and gases erupt at the Earth's surface. The term volcano is borrowed from the much better known world of igneous volcanoes, where molten rock comes to the surface. I've been studying these fascinating structures on subsurface seismic data for the past 5 years, but nothing compares to seeing one actively erupting. For mud volcanoes, in many cases, the mud bubbles up to the surface rather quietly, but sometimes the eruptions are quite violent. Furthermore, most of the gas coming out of a mud volcano is methane, which is highly flammable. This gas can ignite, creating spectacular fiery eruptions. Should we check this out quickly? I haven't seen it.
I'm in a way dangerous zone. It's very dangerous. It's erupting almost 100 meters far from me. I don't think whoever shots a video of the eruption so close. It's just amazing. Just amazing.
Yeah, I think you get the idea. Mud volcanoes are little known in North America, but much more common in other parts of the world, including not only Indonesia, but also Azerbaijan, Trinidad, Italy, and Japan. They form when fluids and gases that have built up under pressure inside the earth find an escape route to the surface via a network of fractures. The fluids move up these cracks carrying mud with them, creating the mud volcano as they escape. The idea is similar to a car tire containing compressed air. As long as the tire is intact, the air stays safely inside. Once the air has a pathway out, however, it begins to escape. Sometimes the air escapes as a slow leak. In other cases, there is a blowout. British Columbia. And we have turquoise-colored water. And maybe white water, or it's frozen, I don't know. Might be water. And there's a next one, and several there are growing. Yeah, there are many of them. British Columbia. So, where have we been? Here's the video. Mudvolcano, Trinidad, Japan, as they escape blowouts. So we might assume that here happened the blowout and here happened the blowout. And maybe one day here is happening and here and here. We don't know. Nalin Plateau, British Columbia. Very interesting. Overpressure within the earth builds up when underground fluids are unable to escape from beneath the weight of overlaying sediments. Some of this fluid was trapped within the sediment when it was deposited. Other fluids may migrate in from deeper sediments, while still others may be generated in place by chemical reactions in the sediments. All chemical reactions are electrical in nature, so if you change the charge of whatever region underground, it will alter probably at least some of the materials, and through that the chemical reactions will be different than before. So if there is a peak of energy, endogenous energy, telluric currents, which could be induced by solar flares, CMEs, and all these kind of things, there might be some things happen down there because of the energy change. Things fluctuate. This is how it works. If you have like charged liquids, let's say they are just hot, they are already charged. Probably it doesn't need any more much until they transmutate themselves into something else, which could be much more explosive or whatsoever, or much more lighter, and it just starts to rise. But anyway, one important type of chemical reaction generates oil and natural gas. Finally, fluids may become overpressured if they are squeezed by tectonic forces during mountain building. Yes, if you believe in plate tectonics. Overpressures are commonly encountered during drilling for oil and gas and are typically planned for. I just remember that's a rather long article, so I will speed up maybe the reading, or I just will quit the reading at one place. Anyway, let's see how far we go. A primary way of dealing with overpressure is to fill the wellbore with dense drilling mud which has sufficient weight to contain the overpressures. If the well is drilled with insufficient mud weight, any overpressured fluids can rush up the wellbore to explode out at the surface, leading to a spectacular blowout. Famous examples of blowouts include the 1901 Spindletop Gusher in Texas and the more recent 2010 Deepwater Horizon disaster in the Gulf of Mexico. This sounds really interesting. Deepwater Horizon disaster. In those cases, it was oil, not mud, that burst out of the wells. In addition to being fascinating in their own right, mudvolcanoes are also useful to scientists as windows into conditions deep inside the Earth. Mudvolcanoes can involve materials from as deep as 6 miles below the Earth's surface. So their chemistry and temperature can provide useful insights into deep Earth processes that can't be obtained in any other way. They also probably have to think about the material which is rising from so deep, going so high up, let's just say to the surface. It's still 10 kilometers, which is higher than every mountain you find on Earth's surface. For those who have been in the mountains and tried to cook water, they probably noticed that the boiling point changes as you go up into the mountains. So the thing with the fluids rising from deep below, they might experience several similar things on their way to the surface. So the original fluid which starts to rise might be something different than what is coming out at the surface, through to pressure changes and such. For example, analysis of the mud erupting from Lucy has revealed that the water was heated by an underground magma chamber. What else could it do? You know, what a surprise. Associated with a nearby Arjuno Velirang volcanic complex. Every mud volcano reveals details about what's happening underground, allowing scientists to build a more comprehensive 3D view of what's going on inside the planet. Lucy's mud is still erupting. Today, more than 16 years later, after the eruption began. Yeah, I figured it's my invention, this later word for this sentence, so let's read it again. Today, more than 16 years after the eruption began, the Lucy structure in Indonesia continues to erupt, but at a much slower rate. Its mud covers a total area of roughly 2.7 square miles, 7 square kilometers, more than 1,300 football fields, and is contained behind a series of leaves that have been built up to a height of 100 feet, 30 meters. This is what we watched in the beginning. Now let's go back to the beginning. I told you that's big. Do we get a better quality if we click on that? Can you click on that? Enlarge. No, doesn't help. Doesn't do anything. But these are excavators and big machines there. They don't seem big in that picture. Where have you been? 30 meters. An officer decide what happens. Yeah, I think now it works again. There wasn't any internet or anything. Interesting. Anyway, it's still erupting. Almost as interesting as the efforts to stop the mud have even been the legal battles aimed at assigning blame for the disaster. The initial rupture occurred about 600 feet, 200 meters from an actively drilling gas exploration well, leading to widely publicized accusations that the oil company responsible for the well was at fault. Yeah. If there is a fault, they are probably drilling the fault in order to get the oil. The operator of the well, Lapinobrantas, countered that the eruption was naturally triggered by an earthquake that had occurred several days earlier. Those who believe the gas well triggered the eruption argue that the well experienced a blowout due to insufficient mud weight, but that the blowout did not come all the way up the wellbore to the surface. Instead, the fluids became only part way up the wellbore before injecting sideways into fractures and erupting at the surface several hundred meters away. As evidence, these proponents point to measurements made in the well during drilling. Furthermore, they suggest the earthquake was too far away from the well to have had any effect. By contrast, proponents of the earthquake trigger believe that the Lucy eruption was caused by an active hydrothermal system in the subsurface, somewhat akin to Old Faithful in Yellowstone National Park. They argue that such systems have a long history of being affected by very distant earthquakes, so the argument that Lucy was too far away from the earthquake is invalid. Furthermore, they suggest that the pressure test in the well conducted after the eruption started showed that the wellbore was intact, not breached by fractures and leaking fluid. Consistent with this interpretation, there is no evidence that any of the drilling mud ever came out of the Lucy eruptions. In 2009, the Indonesian Supreme Court dismissed a lawsuit charging the company with negligence. The same year, police dropped criminal investigations against Lapindo Brantas and several of its employees, citing a lack of evidence. Although the lawsuits have been settled, the debate continues, with international research groups lining up on both sides of the dispute. And maybe they also should put a mark on that. It's just one of many other volcanoes which are not on this map. Sidoarjo, Mudvolcano, East Java. But I think I'll leave it here. Thanks. Bye.